I always thought the worst way to start your day was realizing you're out of coffee. Turns out, I was wrong. The worst way to start your day is realizing your wife has been lying to you for God knows how long while you're trying to fix a broken water heater in your own basement. I should probably back up. It was a Saturday morning. I remember that because Saturdays were supposed to be my sacred nothing days. No work, no obligations, just me, my couch, and whatever game was on TV. But instead of relaxing, I was standing knee-deep in frustration, surrounded by a mess of tools, trying to figure out why our water heater had decided to quit on me. Linda was upstairs, humming. That was my first red flag. Linda never hummed. Not in the morning, not at night, not ever. It was like she had been injected with pure joy while I was inhaling dust and muttering to myself about water pressure. I had just about given up on the heater when I noticed something odd. Now, I'm no detective, but I'm also not a fool. I know what's supposed to be in my basement. Old Christmas decorations, a treadmill we both swore we'd use, and about 6 different half-empty paint cans. What I did not expect to see was a neatly folded man's jacket hanging on the back of a chair. A jacket I did not own. Now, there are 2 possibilities when you find a strange man's jacket in your basement. 1. Your wife has a secret habit of collecting lost and found items, in which case, okay, weird but harmless. Or 2. And this is the option my brain really didn't want to consider. There was another man in the picture. I picked up the jacket and examined it like it was some kind of crime scene evidence. It wasn't my size. The sleeves were too long, and it had one of those fancy labels sewn inside, the kind that makes it very clear the guy who owns it makes way more money than you do. Great. Not only was my wife possibly cheating, but she was cheating with a guy who probably had a working water heater. I debated what to do. March upstairs and throw the jacket at Linda? No, too dramatic. Besides, I didn't want to tip her off just yet. Instead, I played it cool, or as cool as a man can be while holding another man's coat in his basement. I casually walked upstairs, tossing the jacket over my arm like I was about to go on some high-end fashion runway. Linda was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, looking way too pleased with herself for someone who had left me alone to battle household plumbing. Hey, babe, I said, leaning against the doorway. We got company I don't know about? Or did you suddenly start wearing men's jackets now? Bold fashion choice. Linda froze for half a second, just enough time for me to know I'd hit a nerve. Then she laughed, this airy, forced thing that made me want to throw the nearest kitchen appliance out the window. Oh, that? She said, waving a hand like it was nothing. That's probably my brother's. He visited last week, remember? Ah, the brother excuse. Classic. Except for one tiny little issue. Linda, your brother lives in Texas. Another pause. Another laugh. Right? I meant my coworker. He helped me bring in some stuff from the car the other day. Must have left it behind. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, which coworker? At this point, I wasn't even mad yet. I was entertained. It was like watching a contestant on a game show try to bluff their way to the jackpot. She hesitated. Mark. Ah yes. Mark. Mark, the imaginary coworker who definitely existed and definitely owned expensive jackets that just happened to find their way into my basement. You sure? I asked, tilting my head. Because I could swear you've never mentioned Mark before. You've worked at the same place for 5 years. Not once have I heard you say, oh, by the way, John, my buddy Mark and his suspiciously nice jacket are part of my daily routine. She scoffed. Well, excuse me for not giving you a full list of my coworkers. Mark is new. I smirked. New, huh? Funny. This jacket looks like it belongs to someone who's been buying tailored suits for years. You sure Mark isn't just old Mark? Linda was running out of steam. I could see it. She glanced at the jacket, at me, back at the jacket, and then did the one thing I was hoping she'd do. She grabbed her phone and quickly texted someone. Now, I don't have psychic powers, but I didn't need them to guess that the text probably read something like, help. He knows. I let her sweat it out for a few more seconds before setting the jacket down on the counter. You know what? You're right. Maybe it is Mark's. Guess I'll just hold on to it until he remembers he left it. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Because we both knew Mark wasn't coming to claim that jacket. Linda suddenly needed to run an errand, which was hilarious because she never left the house before noon on weekends. I let her go. I even smiled as she grabbed her purse and bolted out the door like her shoes were on fire. I waited exactly 10 minutes before picking up her phone from where she'd left it on the counter. And that's when I saw the message. Not from Mark. From someone named D. And buddy, let me tell you, Mark was the least of my concerns after that. Linda had barely been gone for 5 minutes before I was standing there, holding her phone like it was a winning lottery ticket. Now, before you start thinking I'm the kind of guy who snoops through his wife's messages on a daily basis, let me clarify. I had never done this before. Not once. But when your wife suddenly starts sprinting out the door after a completely normal conversation about a mysterious designer jacket, you start making exceptions to your own rules. I tapped the screen. Locked. Of course. But I wasn't an amateur. I knew Linda's code. She wasn't exactly creative with it. Our anniversary. Well, the anniversary she remembered, anyway. I had a suspicion she might have a few others marked down somewhere for other purposes. I typed it in. Bingo. Now, I wasn't sure what I was expecting when I opened her messages, but let's just say I wasn't mentally prepared for the sheer stupidity that was waiting for me. At the top of the screen was a conversation with D. No last name. Just a single, lonely letter. Because apparently, when people cheat, they think they're starring in some kind of spy movie. I scrolled up. D, are we good for Monday? Linda, I told you, I need to be careful. He's been asking questions. D, you said he doesn't notice anything. Linda, well, he does now. I stopped reading. Not because I was done, but because I had to pause and appreciate the sheer audacity of it all. Linda was talking about me like I was some clueless sitcom husband who just now figured out his wife wasn't actually going to yoga class 3 nights a week. I took a deep breath and kept scrolling. D, relax. He doesn't have proof. He's just suspicious. Don't make it obvious, and he won't do anything. Linda, easy for you to say. You don't live with him. Ah, yes. Poor Linda. Forced to suffer through the unbearable hardship of living with the husband she was actively lying to. Truly, my heart went out to her. I kept scrolling, and that's when I saw it. A picture. Now, I know what you're thinking. Was it that kind of picture? No. No, it was worse. It was a picture of my garage. The inside of my garage. For a second, I didn't even get it. Why would someone send Linda a picture of our own garage? I stared at it, trying to make sense of it, and then it hit me. Someone had taken this picture while I wasn't home. Someone who wasn't me had been standing inside my garage, taking pictures like some kind of real estate agent. And then, another text. D, if he finds out, we can use the backup plan. Just get rid of him for a night. We'll handle the rest. I blinked. What exactly were we handling here? Because I was starting to feel like I was in the wrong genre of life. Was I supposed to be getting a dramatic plot twist? Was I about to be shoved off a cliff for the insurance payout? I scrolled up even further, but the messages cut off there. Linda had been smart enough to delete the earlier parts of the conversation, but not smart enough to remember that her phone auto-backed up everything to the cloud. At this point, I had enough to know one thing. This wasn't just your standard case of, oops, my marriage is over. This was premeditated, organized, like Linda had been running a full-on side business right under my nose. And for what? Some guy who signed his texts with a single letter like he was a 14-year-old trying to be edgy? I took a step back. All right, fine. She wanted to play? We were playing. The first thing I did was take a screenshot of the conversation and send it to myself. If Linda was dumb enough to leave evidence on her phone, I was going to make sure I had a copy of it before she figured out her mistake. The second thing I did, I put her phone back exactly where she left it. Let her think she was still running the show. And the third thing? Well, that one was my favorite. I grabbed my keys and walked out to the garage, the same garage that someone had apparently been sneaking into without my knowledge. And I started looking around. What exactly was so interesting in here? It took me a couple of minutes, but then I saw it. A set of car keys. Not my car keys. Not Linda's, either. A third set. I picked them up, turned them over in my hand, and then clicked the unlock button. A car beeped. Not my car. Not Linda's. A third car. I turned around slowly, and there it was, parked right outside my house, sitting there like it had always belonged. And that's when I really started grinning, because it looked like our mysterious D had gotten a little too comfortable, and I was about to make sure he regretted that mistake. I stood there, keys in hand, staring at the car that did not belong. It wasn't some fancy sports car or an old rust bucket. It was aggressively average. Silver, for doors, nothing flashy. Just the kind of car that blends into parking lots and makes you forget it even exists the second you walk away. But here's the thing. This particular forgettable car had been parked outside my house long enough for Linda and Dee to get comfortable leaving their evidence lying around, which meant one of two things. Option 1. D was a moron. Option 2. Linda had picked a moron. Either way, this was already fun for me. I hit the unlock button again, and the car beeped like it was excited to meet me. I walked up, tried the handle, open. Just like that. No alarm, no security measures, nothing. I was almost offended at how little effort had been put into keeping me out. I slid into the driver's seat and took a look around. The first thing I noticed? The smell. Not some expensive cologne, not cigarettes, not even that weird gym bag stench. No, this car smelled like someone had been living in it part-time. Stale air, faint traces of fast food, and the distinct scent of bad decisions. I popped open the glove compartment. Because, listen, if you're going to cheat and get sloppy, you might as well be predictable. And predictable people? They leave things behind. Boom. Insurance papers. Name? Darren Foster. Darren. Of course. Not Dante or Damien or anything remotely cool. Just Darren. The kind of guy who probably asked for extra sauce packets at fast food places and never used them. I sat back and smiled. Now, at this point, a reasonable person might have taken a picture of the insurance papers, closed everything up, and walked away like a responsible adult. I am not a reasonable person. I grabbed Darren's registration, tossed it on the passenger seat, and then went for the center console. Jackpot. A folded-up gym membership card. One of those cheap, 24-hour places that smelled like sweat and desperation. It had his full name on it. Even better, the barcode on the back meant I could walk right in and pretend I belonged. I was officially in possession of more personal information about Darren than I had about some of my own coworkers. I could have stopped there, but something told me there was still more. I leaned back, checked under the seat. Nothing. Back seat. Just an old hoodie and a crumpled fast food receipt. Then I popped the trunk. And that's when things got interesting. Because right there, sitting inside, was a small duffel bag. Now, I don't know about you, but when I find a mystery bag in a car belonging to the guy secretly meeting my wife, I'm going to open it. So I did. Inside, a single change of clothes, a cheap razor, and a bottle of mouthwash. And then, tucked in the side pocket, I found a key. Not a car key, not a house key, a room key, one of those plastic ones from a motel. I turned it over. No name, just a room number. 117. Well, now I had a new place to visit. I put everything back where I found it, except for the gym card, which I slid into my wallet because I wasn't done with it yet. Then, I locked the car, because unlike Darren, I had some basic security awareness, and went back inside the house. Linda's phone was still sitting on the counter, blissfully unaware of the fun I was about to have. I had options now. I could go straight to the motel, check out room 117, and see what kind of mess Darren had waiting for me. Or I could wait until Linda came back and see what kind of excuses she tried to come up with next. I picked option 3. I was going to play dumb. I took my time cleaning up, made myself a cup of coffee, and then sat down like nothing in the world was wrong. I wanted to see just how far Linda would go to keep up the act. About 20 minutes later, the front door opened, and in walked Linda. "Oh, you're still home," she said, like she hadn't just sprinted out of here not even half an hour ago. "Yup," I said, sipping my coffee. "Had to take care of some things." She nodded slowly, watching me like I was a bomb she wasn't sure how to defuse. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Great, actually. Oh, by the way, I saw a car parked outside for a while. You know whose it is." Her face didn't change, but I saw her shoulders stiffen just slightly. "A car?" she repeated, pretending to think. No? Maybe someone visiting a neighbor." "Maybe," I said, nodding. "Weird, though. Been there for a while." She waved it off. "Probably nothing." "Probably," I agreed. She smiled like everything was fine. I smiled back. I couldn't wait to visit room 117. Linda had no idea. That was the best part. She stood there, smiling like she had everything under control, while I sat across from her, knowing I had a key to a motel room that probably had more of her lies stuffed into it than our entire house. I could have gone straight for the confrontation, but where's the fun in that? No. I wanted to see how deep she was willing to dig her own hole. "So," I said, stretching my arms out like this was just another casual Saturday morning, "what was the errand?" She blinked. "What?" "You know, the errand. The one you ran out for so fast you forgot to make up a good excuse before you left." For a brief second, her eyes darted to her phone on the counter. Not fast enough for most people to notice, but I was paying attention. I didn't even look at it. I just stared at her like I had all the time in the world. "Oh," she said, forcing a chuckle. "Just had to grab a few things." "Yeah? What things?" She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "You know, stuff." "Stuff," I repeated. "That's specific." She rolled her eyes. "Why are you suddenly so interested in my errands?" "Because you're suddenly terrible at making them up." Her lips pressed together for a second, like she was debating whether to be defensive or charming. She went with charming. "John, come on. You're acting weird." "Weird?" I was acting weird? That was rich. I shrugged. "Just asking questions." "Well, stop. It's annoying." And just like that, she was over it. Just dismissed me entirely like I was some nosy neighbor asking too many questions about her yard. She grabbed her phone, checked the screen, probably looking for a text from Darren, who was undoubtedly wondering why his car was still sitting outside my house, and then walked off toward the bedroom like our conversation was already forgotten, which was fine by me, because I had plans. A few hours later, when Linda said she was going out for a bit, I smiled and told her to have fun. She hesitated for just a second, probably wondering if I was going to question her, but when I didn't, she grabbed her keys and left. The second the door shut, I was up and moving. I grabbed Darren's gym membership card, his motel key, and hopped in my car. 15 minutes later, I was pulling into the parking lot of the kind of motel where the pillows probably smelled like regret. The building itself was exactly what you'd expect. 2 stories, exterior doors, a neon sign that was half burned out. This was the kind of place that didn't ask questions, and I was willing to bet Linda and Darren had been using it long enough to get a customer loyalty discount. I parked at the far end of the lot and casually walked toward room 117, key in hand. If someone saw me, I'd just pretend I belonged here. Which, judging by the number of cars in the lot, was probably what everyone else was doing too. I slid the key into the lock, turned it, and stepped inside. And let me tell you, the moment I saw what was in that room, I knew Linda was an even bigger fool than I originally thought. Because there, sitting on the cheap motel desk, was a laptop. And not just any laptop, Linda's laptop. The one she kept glued to her side like it held the nuclear codes. I had barely stepped inside, and already, I had more than I came for. But that wasn't even the best part. Because sitting next to it, as if Darren had personally wrapped it up and left it just for me, was a folder. A real, actual folder. Like a manila one. Full of printed papers. Who in 2024 prints things out? Darren, apparently. I grabbed the folder, flipped it open, and started reading. And that's when I stopped smiling. Because it wasn't just some romantic emails or a list of rendezvous spots. No, this was bank statements. And not Darren's. Linda's. She had a separate account. A big one. And from the looks of it, she had been funneling money into it for a while. The deposits? Cash. The withdrawals? Hotel payments. But that wasn't even the interesting part. The interesting part? The amount. Because we weren't talking a few $100 here and there. We were talking thousands. I stood there, flipping through page after page, realizing that Linda hadn't just been sneaking around. She had been planning something. And suddenly, this wasn't just about her cheating anymore. No, this was about why. And I was going to find out. I stood there, flipping through those bank statements. And let me tell you, nothing kills the illusion of a happy marriage faster than finding out your wife has been secretly stockpiling money like she's preparing for a prison break. It wasn't just a couple of hidden transactions. It wasn't some emergency savings she had forgotten to mention. No, Linda had been shoveling money into this account for months. Maybe years. And the kicker? The withdrawals were all tied to hotels, cash transfers, and, just to really twist the knife, a lawyer's office. Linda had a plan, and I wasn't in it. Now, a lesser man might have confronted her immediately, might have stormed home, thrown the folder on the table, and demanded answers like some second-rate soap opera husband. But me? No. If Linda wanted to be sneaky, I was going to show her how it was really done. I put everything back exactly how I found it. Laptop, folder, even the chair. Because when Linda came back here, I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to believe she still had the upper hand. I left the motel, got in my car, and started my real work. The first thing I did? I made a phone call. Not to Linda, not to Darren, but to my own lawyer. Yeah, see. Unlike Linda, I didn't need to hide my money. What I needed was a plan, and I needed it fast. Because now that I knew she was planning an escape, I wasn't about to sit around and wait for her to pull the trigger. I gave my lawyer the short version. Wife's been moving money, possible affair. Need to get ahead of whatever stunt she's about to pull. He told me to come in first thing Monday morning. Perfect. Step 1. Done. Step 2. I got home and locked down every single joint account we had. Linda thought she was being smart, sneaking money away. That was cute. But see, she wasn't just siphoning her own paycheck. She had been dipping into our shared accounts too. And since I was the primary account holder, I had the power to shut it all down. Which I did. Everything frozen. Her little escape fund? Untouchable. And because I was feeling generous, I even set up alerts so that the second she tried to move anything, I'd know. Step 2. Done. Step 3. Her job. Now, Linda wasn't the type to actually love working. She tolerated it, the way you tolerate waiting in line at the DMV. But her office was a goldmine of information, and lucky for me, I happened to know someone who worked there. Her coworker, Brian. Good guy. Always complained about Linda mysteriously leaving early and never answering emails on time. The kind of guy who had zero loyalty to her. I called him up, kept it casual. Hey, Brian, quick question. Has Linda been acting weird at work lately? And let me tell you, Brian was thrilled to vent. Oh man, John, you have no idea. She's barely here. Half the time she says she's meeting clients, but never actually brings in new accounts. And she's been printing all this weird stuff in the office, but she never leaves it in the printer. Like, dude, who still prints things? I smiled. Brian, I said, you ever get curious and take a look? He laughed. Oh, buddy, I'm nosy. I saw one by accident once. It looked like a timeline or something, dates and numbers. Thought it was a budget at first, but it had names on it. And get this, Darren was one of them. Step 3. Done. Step 4. Her car. Linda was predictable. She drove the same route every day, parked in the same spot at work, never deviated from her schedule. But today, I was going to help her change it. That night, while she was asleep, I took her spare car key. And in the morning, her car wouldn't start. Oh, come on, she groaned, slamming the door shut. Not today. I sipped my coffee. Want me to call a tow truck? She waved me off. No. I'll take an Uber. I have to get to work. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Because while she was gone, I got into her car, turned the fuel pump fuse back on, and then drove it somewhere else. Not just anywhere. To Darren's apartment complex. And parked it right in his spot. Then, I took an Uber home and waited. Linda came home that evening, looking stressed. You won't believe the day I had, she said, tossing her bag on the couch. Oh, I said, barely looking up. My car is gone. I raised an eyebrow. Gone? Yeah, I left it at the office, and now it's just not there. Did you call the police? She hesitated. I smiled. Because she couldn't, could she? The second she did, they'd ask where it was. And oh wow, look at that. It just so happened to be at the apartment of a man she definitely wasn't supposed to be involved with. Step 4. Done. And now? The finale. See, Linda thought she was ahead. She thought she was controlling this whole thing. But tomorrow, when she tried to pull money from her secret account and found it frozen, when she realized her car was sitting in Darren's lot, screaming their affair to the world, when she walked into work, only to have Brian casually mention that someone had been printing weird documents, and suddenly everyone was curious. She'd know. She'd know that while she was busy cheating, lying, and scheming, I had been beating her at her own game. And when she finally turned to me, ready to lie her way out, I'd just smile and say, oh, come on, Linda. You're acting weird. Cold revenge? Done. The morning started like any other. Linda was already awake, pacing the living room, phone glued to her ear, her voice just a little too forced, a little too controlled. I sipped my coffee, enjoying the performance. Yes, I understand, she said, her tone bordering on panic. But that account should be accessible. Can you check again? Silence. Then a forced laugh. That's impossible. I didn't request a freeze. Another pause. No, I don't need to come in. I just need access restored. This is ridiculous. She ended the call and immediately made another. Darren, we have a problem. Ah, so we were skipping the usual morning pleasantries, straight into crisis mode. I leaned back in my chair, watching her with the kind of detached amusement you get when you're about to watch a Jenga tower collapse. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The money's locked. Someone froze it. I took another sip of coffee. Someone, huh? She started pacing again. No, I don't know how. No, I didn't tell him about it. Why would I? Great question, Linda. I checked the time. 5 minutes past 8. She was running late, probably because she still had no idea where her car was. "John," she said, turning toward me, forcing a smile so fake it should have come with a return policy. "You're not going to believe this. My account. Frozen," I said, cutting her off. "Yeah, that's weird." Her smile flickered. "Yeah, super weird." She studied me for a second, probably trying to decide if I knew more than I was letting on. I stared back, waiting. She switched tactics. "Also, my car is missing. I think it was stolen." "Wow," I said. "Tough morning." "Yeah," she said. "Did you see anything?" I shrugged. "Nope. You should probably call the police." And there it was. The half-second of hesitation before she forced another laugh. "I don't know. Maybe I should check a few places first." "Oh, absolutely, Linda. Go check Darren's parking spot. Maybe you'll find a fun surprise waiting for you." She grabbed her purse, moving toward the door. "I'll be back soon." "Take your time," I said, because I meant it. The second she was gone, I grabbed my keys. 15 minutes later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. "Good timing," he said, barely looking up as he shuffled some papers. "Your wife just tried to pull money from your accounts." I smiled. And she can't." "Perfect. Now," he continued, "you ready to sign?" He pushed the divorce papers across the table. I had never been more ready for anything in my life. I picked up the pen and signed my name. "Now what?" I asked. "Now," he said, "we deliver the papers." Linda was about to have an even worse day. I left the office and headed straight home, but Linda still wasn't back. I checked my phone, 5 missed calls from her. No messages. Just desperate, silent attempts to reach me. I ignored them. Instead, I grabbed her packed suitcase. She didn't know I had packed it for her, of course. But I had taken the liberty of stuffing it with all the essentials. Her clothes, her makeup, every useless thing she cared about. And none of the things she actually needed. A few minutes later, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I stood by the front door, suitcase in hand. Linda stormed inside, face red, eyes wild. "John, hey, welcome back," I said. "Find your car." She threw her hands up. "What the hell is going on?" "The money, my car." "Oh, right," I said, pretending to just remember something. "I forgot to tell you, I moved some things around. You know, since we're getting divorced." The color drained from her face. "What?" I held up the papers. "You've been served." She took a step back, like the words physically hit her. No, this isn't." "John, I can explain." "Linda," I said, holding up a hand. "You are so bad at lying." She opened her mouth, then closed it, probably trying to come up with something convincing. She failed. "You froze my account," she finally managed. "Yep," I said. "Turns out, when you try to secretly drain shared accounts, banks get real interested." She blinked. "My car. In Darren's parking spot," I said. "By the way, you should probably go pick it up before his wife notices." The blood drained from her face. His wife. "Oh yeah," I said. "Guess you weren't the only one he was sneaking around on." For a second, she just stood there, staring at me like she had never actually considered that Darren might have been playing her too. And you know what? That made it even better. I lifted the suitcase and set it by her feet. "You should go," I said. "We're done here." Her lips parted, like she was about to say something, but what was left to say? She had lied. She had planned her escape. But she forgot one thing. I was always 10 steps ahead. She grabbed the suitcase, turned toward the door, then stopped. "You'll regret this, John." I smiled. Not even for a second. And then, just like that, she was gone. I closed the door behind her, locking it. Then I turned back toward my house. Not our house. Mine. And just like that, Linda was nothing but a memory. A bad investment. And the best mistake I ever walked away from. The end. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel